Hey everybody, welcome to the Growing with Fishes podcast. I'm Steve.
I'm Marty.
I'm Vlad.
This is the Growing with Fishes podcast. We do the try to do this every week. Can't promise we'll be able to get this done next week. We're gonna try. Next week's gonna be crazy because I may or may not be heading to California next week. If not, it will be the week after. But we'll talk about that later. Um, we want to thank Vlad for joining us today. Vlad Jevanovic, the guy who's invented dual root zone planting, is joining us today on the show. He's a good friend of mine, and I'd like to introduce him and just thank him for joining us today. And
Hey, thanks, Steve.
yeah,
I feel honored to be here. I'd like to thank the I'm just teasing. Yeah, invented dual root zone. I guess I didn't really invent it, Steve. I really just mimicked nature. I saw something going on that I thought I could angle to my human advantage in my AP system. So I tried it and it worked out great, and then kind of worked on it and kind of you took the ball and really, ran with it and applied it, to the cannabis realm, big time. That was awesome. I was stuck in, draconian law Serbia where, might as well be growing opium poppy or something. So it was, peppers, cucumbers, tomatoes, different heavy fruiting plants in the DRC. But no, the whole concept behind that, if I can eat up some time, is just that in nature, plants have developed basically two types or two sets of roots. The first being, we'll divide into the upper and lower rhizome, I guess. And the upper roots just kind of seek out nutrients. There's not a lot of nutrients, going on a foot or two below the topsoil surface. Those are water-seeking roots. So all I did is really divide that, bucket or whatever into two different medias, and then kind of helped the plants do its thing a little more than nature would have, just created like a really like the ultimate upper lower environment or whatever the heck. And it worked out good. It was but no one ever would have heard of it if it wasn't for people like you and others who were like, hey, this is kind of cool, and it wasn't why, let's do this. And trying it out here and there, and everyone who, I don't know of anyone who tried it and had it not work. It just doesn't make sense like for it not to work. So I don't know. It's a decent solution to one particular problem. Other people have different ways of doing it or coming at it, but I happen to like that one. It takes care of a lot of the common issues you have to mitigate in aquaponics when growing cannabis. So, anyways, but I didn't invent it. Uh,
It sounds like
unless
it.
well, in that case, you guys owe me money for coming on your show and talking about it. So you can send a check to dot dot dot. But no, it's again, I think a lot of people, and myself included. I don't know. I was gonna say scientists. I don't want to lump myself in that category or whatever. But a lot of people and scientists, kind of observe the natural world and note what they see, and just kind of think about how to apply that to whatever it is that they're attempting to do or whatnot. So that's really all I do. I don't really invent anything. I just steal from nature. I copy and paste the little tidbits that make sense to me and help me, do or achieve whatever it is I'm trying to see or figure out or work out or see if it works or doesn't work or whatever the heck it is. So that's all. It's just mimicking nature always.
Do you think that is a sort of the same line of thinking that comes into like SIPs, for instance?
I'm not sure what SIPs. Could you repeat that last part? It faded out.
The sub-irrigated planters that everybody's, not everybody, but a lot of
okay. Yeah, it's
pretty similar in.
It's kind of similar. Yeah. From what I know of those sub-irrigated planters, you can use them in a way that more or less would do the same thing. I don't know if it's really the same thing, but you could use that equipment and turn it into a dual root zone sort of scenario for sure. Necessitating top feeding or top watering. I don't know if it really doesn't make sense to do in hydroponics though. And I've talked to hydroponic researchers about this, and they looked into it, and it has been studied. I'm not like Columbus there and invented white bread or whatever. but it's just the gains aren't really worth it in hydro. Whereas in aquaponics, because of the the nutrient profile that's kind of typical of a brand new, especially AP system, is just so lacking for growing any kind of cannabis or heavy fruiting plants, cucumbers, whatever. Forget it. It seemed to really make sense there. Not so much in hydro, where you really control the nutrient profile on a week-to-week basis, or whatnot. And the plants don't really benefit so much. Whereas in a nitrogen-rich and not much else, often, I don't know, that's not fair to say not much else. Often AP systems are lacking in potassium, magnesium, some other things depending, zinc, since everyone stays away from it, like zinc and copper, toxic to fish. So a lot of the AP system water that we test out at the lab, different systems, they're either like 20 times over on zinc, or there's none. So AP is not an ideal. It's not an ideal scenario. Particularly raft AP. Like I see some of these fools doing, trying to grow cannabis and raft. Aquaponics is especially some of these guys you figure should certainly know better. I mean, these aren't like YouTube cowboy newbies or whatever either. So at any rate, it's just meant to mitigate some of the nutrient deficiencies basically, without contaminating your entire system water volume and having that get into the fish's water, which was fun to play with. It had a friend in Serbia who was like the largest aquarium shop, so he let me kill tons of his fish, trying out this and that. But I found that it's pretty hard to kill the fish as long as you stay away from common sense items. Use safe nutrients, safe amendments. There's a safe way to do it. There's really dumb ways to do it too, obviously, but you can't really guard against that. We get complaints often, this didn't work or that didn't, and then when you kind of start asking questions, you realize really quickly why. Like, no, you're not supposed to add a half a pound of iron, every week. You have your system's 300 gallons. You need like a teaspoon. Well, I couldn't find anything online, so you found my phone number like after the fact. Why don't you call before you do something totally ridiculous like that? But guarding that type of incidents notwithstanding, not to rip on the AP world, but it's I kind of stay out of it anymore. It's a peculiar cast of characters, I guess. We'll leave it at that. And I just don't have time for it. There's not enough money in it, or wasn't up until cannabis. That seemed like a no-brainer. I mean, organic or clean green certifiable cannabis grown without pesticides, herbicides, using fish. We're going to try to be working with the Humboldt Sun Growers Guild and some of the other agencies out that way to have them right off the bat, which we already missed the boat on that one. The new county-wide regulations were published in January. So what we'd like to do is have them an addendum or amend that to include technologies such as aquaponics or organic hydroponics. They're okay with that as long as it's outdoor grown, no artificial lights and whatnot. They're all about using the sun. And I think I think it's logical, once you explain it, most people get it. Just because aquaponic system looks visually like a hydro setup, and it looks that way because the components come from hydro, basically, but what's going on inside of one of those dual root zone grow beds or media beds, in a mature system, in a mature aquaponic system, on a microbiological level, if you look at that underneath the microscope, like we've done for years, in the lab and here and whatnot, it looks a lot more like what goes on in my organic soil garden than it does in my hydro system. So, again, the dual root zone thing just seems like a wonderful fit, a way to get around some of the problems associated with aquaponics, nutrient-wise, while at the same time staying, safe and clear of a lot of the substances people are upset about in food and cannabis growing. And I don't know, I like it. So we'll see if we can make that a truly commercial, viable model. Or not. So we'll see if it works. If it does, great. If it doesn't, it was a back to the drawing board kind of thing, and they can't all be seniors, I guess. So far on the scale that we've been doing things, it's worked just fine, and I think Steven has been a great help working out some of the peculiarities of doing it on a really kind of big scale. So that's been fun working with Steve on that.
Yeah, for those that don't know, Vlad's kind of my partner in crime in some of these bigger projects now coming up that you guys have been hearing a little bit about, and um, you guys just got to see a little bit about earlier in some of the videos down in Jamaica and stuff. Vlad will be kind of the my other half
I'll
on
be
those
his water
projects.
boy. I'm
His
gonna be
other.
carrying water cans up Orange Hill with Steve while him and
Oh yeah,
him
yeah.
and Andra, contemplate where the best place for Vlad to dig holes would be.
No,
On the south-facing slope.
no,
No, just teasing.
I remember when Vlad came to visit us when I was working at Aquaponics first. I hadn't been there super
You broke
long.
my business partner's jaw.
Well, no,
He
that was
broke his
later
jaw.
on.
Oh
That
yeah,
was
that was the
later
second
on.
time.
No, that was way later on.
That's
So
right.
this is like I hadn't been there very long, and he
Yeah, you had
shows
just got
up
hired.
and he goes, "I have this way to grow like way heavier fruiting stuff," and I was like, "Huh?" And we were working on the cannabis program like super secret. We hadn't told anybody we were working on it. Like only me and Sylvia knew, and there wasn't anybody else that knew at the time. And so we were working on this project, and then he shows up, and he goes and he shows me this thing, and then he's got a whole presentation, which I don't.
It was for microbiology. It was for
Actually, there's
plant
some really
growth
good pics.
promoting micro.
Yeah, if you guys go on to Dude Grows, he posted a real good blog on it about some pictures and stuff from over in Serbia. But posts this thing or his peppers that are super super heavily fruiting, his cucumbers super heavily fruiting, and I'm just like, man, you just figured out a super easy way to supplement on your fruiting flowering in cannabis. So
Yeah, it was fun. I didn't want to wait
yeah,
like a
so
year for the system to mature, so I grow lettuce for like 2 years, and then finally,
mhm.
like, no, screw that. I don't want to get growing right away. And we did. We grew from 8 cucumber plants over the period of 3.5 months. It's all documented on that grow log thing. I think it was like 3.5 months. 205 sellable pounds, not counting what we ate or what was crooked or whatever. So I was really stoked. Um, I thought that was like super super cool because cukes are heavier feeding than even tomatoes or cannabis. So I figured if it worked there, it just there's nothing it won't work on, and
Wait,
that's been the
cukes are
case.
heavier feeding than cannabis, really?
Well, yeah, it can be.
They
Yep,
fall more
yep.
potassium, or
Well, more magnesium, potassium. They grow longer. It takes a lot of energy to put on. You know how fast cucumbers grow. They
that's
say
true.
there's a saying in Serbian, that kid grows like a cucumber or whatever the hell. Oh wait, that sounds horrible when you say it in English. But no, because they grow overnight like fast, and it takes a lot of energy, and they do. They use a lot of potassium, magnesium, nitrogen, you name it. Have trace minerals, everything. They're like the Chevelle 442s of the plant kingdom.
Word.
I like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I am heading to California to join Vlad in this projects list of projects out there in Humboldt area, and yeah, it'll be fun. So leaving next week or the week after, and we'll be out there, and yeah, it'll be great. So we'll be everything from there, and then we'll be back in Jamaica at some point later in the year. It's just slightly delayed from when we thought we'd be back. We thought we'd be back in about a month. It's going to take a little bit longer than we thought just to get everything together, but that's no problem. But that is everything's rolling along on as it should, just slower than we were hoping. That's all. But that's
Hey,
everything in Jamaica.
Steve, on a kind of unrelated Jamaican note, like I don't watch TV or read the paper, and it's been like 5 6 years, so I gotta rely on other folks for information of that type. Uh, this whole Brexit, I hear Britain like left the European Union or some nonsense.
Yep.
Does that like affect the Jamaican economy?
So
Being
I
an
thought it was
ex-colony and all
going
that
to.
jazz.
It actually just changed the currency value by like 1 to 2 Jamaican dollars to the U.S. dollar. So it went
Right.
from 124 to 125 or 126.
Oh shit! Like 125 one. Oh crap!
Yeah.
Because when you said like 2 or 3, the U.S. I was like, oh crap, that's horrible. Like inflate. But
No, no, no.
125,
When I
100, that's
said
like
2 or 3, I
less
meant
than 1%,
100.
man. Like that's
No, when
nothing.
I said two
Oh,
or three bucks
awesome.
was 2 or 300, I meant two or
Yeah.
300 Jamaican.
Gotcha.
That,
Gotcha.
yeah,
Oh,
that was
oh,
just,
oh,
yeah,
oh,
I meant
yeah.
100.
Well, that's
Yeah,
significant then. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you meant like, oh, gee, I was like, man, that's like point something percent. That's nothing. The Serbian
No,
economy, like the value of the dinar is hilarious, man. It goes up and down. Jesus Christ, like
ridiculous
daily. Oh
amounts.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, there's no hyperinflation anymore. That was fun. Like you get your month's pay, and you can buy like 2 packs of matches with it. If you don't spend, by afternoon, it's worth nothing. It was fun. It was like worse than Argentina. I think we broke all records like ever. It was like Germany, at the end of the 20s or whatever, 30s. Wheelbarrows of money to get a loaf of bread. People just quit using money. They just quit using money and bartered. Everything was blockaded. You couldn't get antibiotics, medicine, gasoline, fuel, nothing. Everything was totally criminalized. Like the entire economy was wild. It's like the wild. It was, I don't know. I thought it was fun, but other people might not think so. I guess. It just, you know. There was the parties were never bigger or better. There, NATO was, the 28 or was it 28 member coalition dropping bombs for 78 days. They were bombing bridges and whatnot, so people started throwing rock concerts on bridges. I don't mean just like guys bringing out their amplifier. I mean like real organized rock concerts, like big stacks, big name bands out there. Kids were printing T-shirts with like what do you call those, the bullseye thingies on top of hats and stuff, like dare you to whatever. They're guarding the bridges, throwing rock concerts, partying. All the cops were down in Kosovo, so you can imagine the youth had quite a time of it. No one wants to sit in bomb shelters with old folks, so they 2-3 days of that, and they're like, screw that. So it was one big party for about 78 days, and then it was cleanup time, So fun stuff. So Humboldt reminds me a lot of home. It's kind of wild up there. That should be fun too.
It's been a lot of time there for sure.
Yeah,
It's fun place.
I
Interesting.
like it. Yeah, interesting for sure. The ecology, first and foremost, is incredibly interesting. Mostly, end up walking around in the woods and stuff out there, and a lot of old animal trails, Indian trails, and kind of just running around on the plateaus above the river, horseback riding, and checking traps, food, and I try to make it like tied into work, So but really, it is work, and it's enjoyable at the same time. It's nice. It's very, very peaceful. I kind of stay out of the cities for the most part, unless you have work to do or whatnot. But yeah, I like it up there. We'll see how it works out.
The country is great. The people definitely clash with each other. I feel like you're like one or the other. Like either you're sort of like left over from the logging industry and sort of like this real sort of hardworking kind of like tough mountain men kind of
Yeah,
family
yeah.
mentality, or you're a grower. Like that's like the
Or
two.
or both, which is
Right.
interesting that's
Right.
happened in
There's
some
that
cases. The
slight
fusion.
overlap, like
Yeah,
where they have the circles. I don't know what kind of graphs that is, but they have the two circles that overlap, and there's some in the
yeah,
middle.
yeah,
But
yeah.
for the most part, it's a whole lot of polarized issues down there. Like I said, my half of my family is from down there. Spent my summers down there. My brother still lives there. I visit him all the time. So it's a weird dynamic for sure. But it's a beautiful place, and the ecology is far better than the people for sure.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, some of the issues, particularly not just cannabis, but most political type issues do seem very polarized. Places, like even the West Coast, or Humboldt. Again, I'm not real politically orientated, but I do notice that it's pretty drastic. And maybe even between classes of people. I do a lot of work in St. Helena, and that's wild. I mean, what you want to? Geez almighty. It's way too fancy for my taste. It's almost uncomfortable at first, but just the class distinction, finance-wise, between, you can tell right away who's an owner and who's doing landscaping, or not to be whatever, but or doing labor. of any type. It's just how it is there, and it's kind of sad to see that dichotomy. But I think money and access to capital is mostly what polarizes people politically. Again, it's just access to capital and resources. A lot of people feel cheated out of of that. So people tend to get upset after being painted into a corner further and further, longer and longer. So everything's cool as long as those violence doesn't break out. That's when it gets cruddy. When people start losing their heads over things like that. So it's all good until stuff like that happens. So it's all right.
Which it does seem like with as polarized as they do,
It doesn't seem like a violent place really at all. Except for, of course, if you go looking for trouble, and there are presence of trafficking groups from down south and all that.
Right.
But you kind of mind your do your own thing, mind your business, and I know folks who've been out there for a long time growing, even on reservation, just never had any problems with anybody. They're there, they grow their own, they grow their food, they help their neighbors, they feed each other, help out, and do their thing, and that's it. Like, they don't really get bothered, but they don't go looking for trouble, which is typically hard drugs and or prostitution. Seems like or women in general. And some of those places seem to be the object of much conflict, much silly, like 5th grade schoolyard type conflict too. A lot of it's so avoidable and
right.
unnecessary. But anyway,
I think there's a lot of a lot of it is ego driven between locals in terms of that also, and then people start nitpicking at each other, and then it escalates to where people can't agree to disagree on any particular level. And and then they want to involve somebody else in it, and try to sort of form teams or different aspects.
Camps.
So and then they try to squeeze people out. There's a whole lot of different things that happen down there that are not good, and there's a lot of them that are great because you have that safety in numbers. You have so many people doing that down there that. If you do sort of stick to your own and mind your business and, take care of what you say you're going to take care of, for the most part, everybody's going to leave you alone. So I definitely agree with that. And I think that the ego-driven part is the part that you have to, it's probably the hardest part to stay out of also as a, just as somebody existing down there, like it can pull you in just like anything else. It can be very, very grammar school like, and you can feel painted into a corner by that too. You have to deal with them to a certain extent, and if you bring in outsiders to, like, say, trim or different things like that, that can bring in its own sort of issues. So I think that you get a lot of transients and people that are coming in to work that definitely people have some legitimate concerns about, but I definitely feel like if they were more accepting of the industry in general, then more people that just lived in the area would be able to do that same trimming work without being hassled on a daily basis, or any of those other things that happen that we all know happen during trim season. So I definitely think that there's a balance there that maintains itself to a certain extent in that area, just because of there's so many people there that are doing it that they can't possibly get all of them, and to a certain extent give up. Like, they go for who they want to go for, and who will fund their police departments, and who will bring in sort of the raw cash that your mom and pop shop isn't going to have on hand. You can grow 600 plants and still not really have necessarily a lot on hand for them to be able to bust and turned into funds. But when you start getting super big and you start having a lot of cash on hand, that's when you start becoming a target. And so I definitely think that it allows for a safe environment for people to do exactly what you said, which is grow their food, grow their medicine, share it with their friends, and live sort of that more interactive lifestyle with both your environment and your community, and hopefully not get bothered. So hopefully legalization doesn't change that like it's changed it in some other areas. I know you guys are up for vote in California coming up this year, so I don't know. I haven't read any of the legislation or even know if it's out to be able to read yet, but hopefully it's not like Washington. Washington is basically imploding right now as far as their medical. Like it's close to done from what I understand.
I have a whole thing about that later on in the episode about that.
Yeah, so I haven't read a lot about it other than just I have some friends in Washington that have posted a lot about it and are done. They didn't renew theirs. They have no interest in it. Basically, it's not worth it. There's not really anything they can do, so they just go recreational and back underground and go. They don't want to be. They feel like they'll get targeted essentially if they do apply for it because of who's in charge of it and how many regulations there are and how expensive it is. So it's definitely a concern. I see Oregon headed in a similar direction if they continue to regulate things the way that they have been in allowing like individual counties to sort of pass their own legislation just based on a council vote that directly conflicts with what the state voted in by popular vote. So,
townships as well, not only counties but townships.
Right.
I have a friend who's a vocal proponent up in Washington in his little township, and they have one of, I guess they call it a not in our town or whatever the heck kind of program, and a township can decide all on their own that there's nothing you can do about it, like you say, and it's there's like a 5 or 7 person council that basically decides, and it's just kind of ridiculous. I think state law, I suppose, says one thing, and I expect that to be the law, I imagine.
Right, and so just to give you an example, here in Jackson County, last year, my entire outdoor aquaponics grow cost me about $20, which was the fish food and the power to run the pump. And that was basically everything else was just supplemented with red worm tea and my own waste here that I had. So, fruits, vegetables, stuff like that cost me $20. My card cost me $200, and my doctor's visit cost me $200. So that was it. And now this year, Jackson County has figured out a way to basically force anybody who wants to grow outside to have to apply for a non-compliance something or other, because they passed legislation that said you can't grow outdoors in like urban residential areas. So even though like my backyard is like up against a wetland and there's like, I don't know if you've seen my videos or anything, but I have a neighbor on one side and a neighbor on the other side. It really only affects 2 people, and it's probably I think I have a 1/4 acre lot, and so I have plenty of room to be able to grow. But because of where I am zoned specifically, urban residential or in rural residential areas, you're limited. But here I can't grow outside without the permit, and that's basically just because of like smell ordinances and neighbors complaining about people having grows. Really about the smell. I mean, really, that's what it breaks down to, is that my neighbor can complain about the smell of my garden, and they come and I already got mine, even though there's no smell. I already got my notice that says I have to apply for my permit, which will now cost $1,500.
Wow, that's a big jump.
So that's on top of everything else. I'm still going to have to pay to get my card. So I'm still going to have to pay for my doctor's visit, all the stuff I paid for last year, and $160 to apply. If I get approved to have my grow outside, then I still have to pay an additional $1,500. So it's like $1,600 and change to be in addition to what I had to do last year. So it's basically adds an extreme hardship to anybody who wants to grow outside or grow for anybody besides themselves. So like probably like 80% of the growers in Jackson County, there's some like 2,000 of them, are on residential or rural residential land. So it's basically forcing a whole shit ton of people to dump the patients that they're currently growing for because it will cost them extra money to have to do it. Or it's just extortion. It's just the county saying, here's another way we can get $1,500 per grower. You know, we know they're turning a profit. We're already taxing them out the ass on the other end. Here's another way that we can get some more, or shut down enough people so that we'll force people to go into more like the recreational market, the more commercial market, that they're essentially allowing people now to come in. Now that Oregon has dropped their requirement of being in Oregon for 2 years before you can be a commercial grower, which was originally in Measure 91, so that it would prevent people from just moving in and setting up shops and shutting down the people that were already here and growing. That was one of the reasons that it was set up the way that it was. And so now that that's already been passed, and they have lifted that since Measure 91. So because it was part of the negotiation that the state was in, where you had OHA, who handled the the Oregon medical marijuana program, and you had the new recreational program, and they were basically trying to figure out regulations for cannabis between the two of them. And in part of that negotiation, they wanted to lift that because the recreational market represented, you know, an opportunity. They wanted people to move to Oregon. They wanted people to invest and bring their money, essentially, is what it came down to. That was, you know, I guess part of the financial appeal to some of the people that supported legalization, was they wanted tax money. That was really what they wanted. I guess, you know, I understand it. I really do, from a business standpoint.
Absolutely, but not rampant taxation. It's ridiculous. Like in California, they're talking about taxing square footage of people's grow space now. The county, not the state. Certain counties, and the price has been set. It's not set, but I mean, it's the one that has been floated around and then got knocked down, and it's going back to, they're going to refandangle the you know, proposed bill. $35 a square foot for, you know, outside grows, for, you know, taxes, county tax. Yeah, so
They should just call that, it's a county tax. I mean, that's a, you know, they call it some sort of like I think it's non-compliance permit, which basically they say that I'm out of compliance growing outside in my residential neighborhood. My neighbor is residential. He's got a freaking field in his backyard of like corn and all kinds of other stuff, but they say that it's now labeled as a farm use product, or a farm use. I can't remember what the.
I thought it was like your second largest or your largest agricultural product produced in Oregon. What's cannabis? What do you mean it's not called? What the hell do they call it? A cosmetic product, or what, a athlete's foot fungal product? What the hell was it labeled as? Categorized as? It's not an agricultural product. Or
right, and so what the local counties did, or individual counties did, is said, okay, well, now that the state has defined it as a farm use product or a farm use plant, they can now regulate farm use inside of their zoning, even though they can't technically regulate cannabis.
So wouldn't that then force, you know, couldn't the cannabis folks then force all their neighbors who grow, you know, corn or have a garden, be dickheads about it, and just, you know, see where that leads? If, you know, if the city or county is going to be asked, you know, just, okay, fine, we'll play by your rules then, but we're going to play ball either way. We will follow your rules, but play we will. So, you know, sometimes that tends to work after a period of time with a smaller, you know, institution like a city government or county government. You can do those type of things, but it takes people being coordinated and not having a head, you know, guy at the front. No, it's just like a grassroots sort of horizontal power structure sort of thing, where you just inundate them with things like that and follow through, and, you know, get some you know, some lawyers who have some activist streaks they're pretty easy to find, and you know, go from there. But yeah, you can't really do that with bigger, you know, cities, counties, and whatnot. But some of these, you know, smaller-ish towns and whatnot, you know, it's just be a pain. If enough people are a pain in the ass, like, eventually they give up. You know, so I've seen
Right.
that
And
happen
so
a lot of times.
we have organized to a certain extent. There's a group called Right to Grow that filed a lawsuit against Jackson County, and they have an injunction to hopefully stop them from issuing any violations and stuff once the case gets accepted. So we have found a lawyer with, you know, actually a couple of them that have that streak, and obviously there's a number of them that, you know, have represented, you know, those people that have been on the wrong end of the law on this particular topic for quite a while, and you know, it's great to have their expertise in that. And you know, it's probably unfortunate that they've had as much work in the industry as they've had, but but they do call on that, and I think that we are going to have the case accepted. Our injunction eventually will get accepted, and they won't be able to do that. But you do have a vacuum now where, like even myself, I grew for 2 other patients that, you know, I essentially had to tell them, you know, I can't grow plants for you. Even when I get my permit, I'm still only limited to 10. I can't have the new regulations say that I can only have 10, whereas before I could have 48. So it's a pretty significant cut in terms of what's available. So, you know, there's always the side of the coin where they wanted to create this vacuum. They wanted to, you know, sort of push a lot of people towards the same new people that they're inviting in. You know, we had a really stable market. We had you know, we didn't have a shortage of product in any dispensary. You know, essentially you had to have a pretty good quality product in order to get it out there and get it sold. Whereas now you have a lot less growers producing a lot less product, and a lot more is going to be, a lot more of a market's going to be available to new people coming in. And so I definitely think that could have been a motivating factor, and that's a big, I guess, discussion topic in most of the groups around here, because we get overwhelming support at council meetings. You know, the last council meeting we had, they walked out of because it was just full of people supporting cannabis. Most of them are elderly people that use it for, like, arthritis and you know, different forms of cancer treatments and things like that. So those are tough people to argue with. You know, when it's someone's grandma there that's like, you know, I have stage 3 pancreatic cancer or whatever it is that, you know, they have, it's tough for them to do. They literally just walked out. They were like, you know, I'm done with it. One guy didn't even come back. And so it's hard to, like, what do you do with someone that has that sort of ability to just ignore the people that voted them in? There's clearly, you know, an overwhelming number of people were there. I would say like 90% of the people in the room that was completely full were pro-growing, that wanted these regulations changed and this zoning stuff figured out immediately. And instead of providing answers or reasons why they were making decisions opposite of what the constituents wanted, they just walked out.
Oh, wow. That's like just flat left and then, holy cow.
Meeting over.
Oh, that's real mature. I'm glad they're leading, you know, forging ahead with the local government there and doing right by the populace. Well, they walked out, huh, rather than answer some simple questions. Well, you know, I say simple because they are simple, but I guess if you're the one having to answer things like that, they're probably not so simple, are they? Huh?
Well, it wasn't even a case where it was, yeah, you know, it was a whole lot of people asking the same question over and over again and not getting any answers. I mean, basically is what it came down to. You know, they would spin a little bit of bullshit and say, oh, well, you know, it's going to take time to draft this and to do that, and we have to check with these people, and we're concerned about the kids, and there's the usual back and forth bullshit.
Yeah, about the children, yeah.
About how, yeah, we're somehow going, yeah. Anyway, the same discussion always happens. Like, well, what is your actual fear for what's going to happen to the child that you're so concerned about? What's your, you know, what's your fear based around? And then you have that, you know, try to have that whole discussion. But after basically the same people got up and said the same thing, you know, after the fourth or fifth person that says, you know, why do you have to increase the cost on my medicine so much? You know, why is it that I can't grow for my mom who, you know, like, why is it that I have to track every ounce of product that gets created from clone or seed all the way to the end? I have to report that to the OHA. Like, why is there so much of this around that we didn't need before? The program's been in place for, I think, what, like 9 years or something like that, and it was never necessary before. Why is it necessary now?
Well, I think you probably know. I mean, you know the answer to that, right? I mean,
That's what
I
they
have
couldn't
no idea what's
find.
going on in your area, but I've heard this story 100,000 times before, and I
Yeah.
think I already know what's going on, but I'd rather hear it from you. You know?
Yeah, I think that's why they walked out though. Like, once it's the fourth or fifth person, like, once you've not had the same, you know, not been able to talk about the same thing 4 or 5 times, you just, you
Yeah.
know, what else can you do? I don't blame them for walking out. I just blame them for not doing something about it even
Well,
afterwards. You know,
yeah,
like,
of
even after
course.
you're faced
Yeah.
with it,
Yeah. Yeah.
or you walk out, like, how come you can't, you know, say, okay, obviously, look at the overwhelming number of people in this room that support it.
Right.
I should probably do what my job is and work out what they want to have happen.
Well, I think that might go not so over so well uh, there, Marty. In a lot of instances, something like that wouldn't, because it's not that. And I'm not saying that's happening in your town, but I've seen I've seen this happen a few times where, well, it's kind of strange. I think that maybe it's not strange that the law coincides with the first year that people outsiders who are not residents, 2-year residents, will be coming in, setting up shop. That means Oregon is now open for commercial business, investors, out-of-state money, big time. So you think that all of a sudden the smell, a bunch of neighbors got together and just this year decided, the smell's kind of bugging us this year. Hasn't bugged us the last, how many ever, whatever years. But this year, the children are especially weak and vulnerable this year, and the old folks' noses or the olfactory senses have just kind of come alive this year for some reason, and we think we need to put mess with the system, put a cap on the medical and strangle it, make it impossible and very much a hassle for local folks to do what they've been doing, so that big larger money businesses can come in from out of state, set up shop, and the state or county or township can then offer. It's kind of back to Snidely Whiplash-ish time period, but it's the same pattern. Then the county can offer those businesses basically a preordained monopoly, more or less, or a very unlevel playing field slated in their favor. And then you couple that with things like tax breaks on land use. Build your facility, you don't have to pay taxes, city taxes, county for 10 years, whatever the hell, that kind of thing. And then, it's very understandable and clear why, council members of some place or another may be playing stupid or playing dumb, and then a year or two later, after deals are signed and made and it kind of comes out to open light, it becomes not so mysterious why the people's will, or however you want to put it, wasn't being listened to. It wasn't that it wasn't being listened to; it was being actively ignored because there are other plans on the table that trump. Not to use a pun or be punny or anything, but it kind of trump anything that people might want or feel they need or have a right to. If you folks could afford to pay them more, it's probably a microcosm, macrocosm thing. If you look at,
Right.
globally politics in the United States, if you can somehow drum up cash to, pay them more, maybe they won't mess with you.
Well, that's where my
I think that's what it comes down to.
right?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's what it comes down to. Like basically, like you said, it's I don't want to call it extortion because you don't
I do.
call it that when it's the government. There has to be some other words for it or whatever.
I call it extortion.
Yeah, I call it that too, but because it is what it is. So it's a racket, and that's fine. But it's our duty, I guess, or a job to then call the bullshit. and it kind of goes round and round, back and forth, and
I think for the, I think
it's politics, I guess, for you.
with all the zoning stuff, I think it could definitely be, property value driven, because if you look at the properly zoned property for growing on, like if you want to, buy a rec permit and grow, thousands of plants and, sell wholesale to the rec market, what you can apply to do in Oregon, and, from anywhere it can, and people are, and all that's happening. But if you want the properly zoned land, it's increased in value by like 30%. And
Wow.
obviously, if you already own a large chunk of that land, and you know that there's going to be people coming here looking to buy up land specifically to grow cannabis, and you can pretty much eliminate a large portion of the county to be able to grow in. There's, if I was coming in with a whole bunch of investor money and buying up land, I can guarantee you I wouldn't buy anything that was zoned residential, regardless of whether or not I felt like it was fair or just, or like it should be that way. I would still, I would still make the decision to buy the EFU or industrial zone land to start with.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure. But again, the competition in the residential areas is gone.
It's gone.
This is the point. It doesn't matter that the whatever we'll call it, the big ag pot factory or whatever, is outside of town. The physical location, that's nice and everything, but the point is that there's no more local producers who are viable in that community anymore, or within the urban, or even probably non-urban at that point, outer surroundings of your town or whatever county.
Right, and so the sort of what do you call it, microeconomy here of having people to where you can just go to a grower and say, here, I'm going to register my card with you, and you grow all the medicine, and you give me a certain amount of it, and the excess goes back to the grower to be able to finance the grow. Essentially, it was kind of the way that it had always worked out. Now, you have a lot less people being able to do that, and that's going to force people, and a lot less people that can grow for themselves. So it'll just force people into a more recreational, commercial environment where they're having to go into a dispensary and spend their own money on medicine, as opposed to getting it for essentially nothing for the most part. If you were a patient, you could find a grower that could grow your 6 plants, give you enough to be able to last the entire year, sell the excess to a dispensary,
right,
and then be able to fund the grow.
And how long did the state let those kind of shenanigans go on?
Oh yeah, since the beginning.
No, I mean, that sounds awesome, but from the standpoint of like the state or business, like that sounds like a nightmare. How do you keep track of that? How do you tax that? How do you, you know what I mean?
Well, they didn't tax it.
Well, yeah,
that's the thing. Like that's what recreation has brought in. Like that's that's the main difference. It's like, oh well.
I'm surprised they let you guys get away with it this long. To be honest, I mean,
Well, because it worked. Like ultimately, that's what it came down to. I think is that. It wasn't until you had Colorado go for like total legalization and had such an excess in tax revenue, and Oregon consistently having such a deficiency in tax revenue that that it just made sense eventually. Once we got supporters on board with us so that we could get it passed, but a lot of those supporters that when they came on board, they came on board for financial reasons. So.
Sure.
Got to take the good with the bad, and hopefully, it'll come around to where we don't take a turn like Washington, to where it looks like their medical will just be absolved altogether sometime soon, or hopefully changed over.
Yeah, hopefully it gets changed over, as opposed to totally gotten absolved or done away with. Is that correct? Or really thinking about doing that?
So actually, I was going to bring this up in the news section, but since we're talking about it now, Washington State patients might lose their medical cannabis status temporarily. There's an article in the Seattle Weekly, Apparently the DOH Department of Health really fucked up royally, and they're not ready to reissue the next round of permits or whatever.
Damn.
So.
Hey Marty, let me ask you. I'm sorry, Steve. How many, like on a yearly basis, you might not know or whatever, but like how many tourists come through Oregon or Oregon?
I don't know. I mean,
You don't even have to answer, but how many come through Colorado on a yearly basis?
I would say a lot more than Oregon.
Yeah, the dispensary recreational model works for Colorado because of the tourists. Like that's like Kansas thinks they're going to legalize, and then become rich or have tax revenue. That's not the case. No one's going to come to Kansas to do anything or whatever. Like, so who's going to be buying all that dispensary recreation? It's silly. Sorry. I mean, here it's silly from an economic standpoint. I mean, not a silly idea, but people who think that here in, say, a state like Kansas or whatnot, or even Missouri, recreational legalization is going to bring in this massive influx of tax revenue dollar. It's not. It's just not. There's no one here. There's no one here to buy it. It will, but.
Hold on, let me explain to you how it is though.
It's not Colorado.
No, it is though. So before legalization, all that money and shit was just going around the black market, and it never was in the tax realm. It was never on the books.
Sure.
And by legalizing it, they're bringing that whole underworld economy onto the books. So they're taxing all that. So that's where that alone. Cannabis is the highest cash crop in the United States.
I agree.
Hands down.
I agree with
nothing else
so far.
So that's why when they say the tax revenue, that's where they're saying it's coming from.
Oh, I get it, Steve, but you get people, talking it up as if every state had what Colorado has. The rocky nature, the tourists, it's just not realistic. People here are talking about the numbers, being on par with like Colorado and whatnot, and looking at what Colorado did, and it's great, and we should look to Colorado, absolutely, and not just with the rec and everything surrounding it, the studies, the long-term studies with school usage amongst high school kids and so forth, which has actually shown that it's gone down slightly, but cannabis usage amongst school kids and high school kids has actually gone down in Colorado. And there's a study out that's been published, and it's great that we can look to Colorado for things like that as well as financial documents, records of tax revenue and so forth, to do things like maybe disprove I don't know, some of Marty's neighbors who pulled it's for the kids kind of spiel, or everyone's going to be on pot and it's a gateway drug and that stuff. There are now studies, thanks to Colorado, to disprove all that, gateway included, gateway drug and all that other nonsense. So, I think what Colorado did is great, and it really, really works. That model works for them. But Steve, what I'm afraid of happening, and it sounds to me like it is happening here and there, or has the potential to, is they're going to tax cannabis right back into the underground economy, and they're going to. It's futile. You can't tax it to death because then you're going to lose all those taxes. It's going to go right back underground.
Well, yeah, but
that doesn't make sense to bleed it dry.
The price plummets, though. I mean, cannabis in Colorado has dropped 30% since legalization.
Good. Good for consumers, but not for growers. Right? Yeah. But that's bound to happen, Steve. It's the price had to go down. It was high to begin with, and I'm sure Colorado went through saturation of everyone and their brothers coming in from outside, wanting to set up shop, get growing, and so forth. And then a lot of people fell off. They just couldn't cut it. At first, anyone who can grow could cut it because there was a big shortfall of product and material. Remember the lines outside dispensaries and whatnot. But pretty soon,
legalization day. I waited in line in the snow on January 1st. Waited for like 9 hours. This lady in front of us was like 80 years old. She was just like, yeah. She was so happy. And then she waited like 2 hours, and they saw she was like 100 years old, so they came and got her and let her go ahead of the line, which was really cool.
Oh, that was nice of everyone. Good. Yeah. Cool, man.
She wouldn't have lasted the 9 hours, that's for sure.
Alcoholics wouldn't do that shit, I'm just saying.
Yeah, that's
true. You don't have
You'll see that shit
You
in the
never seen that at
bar
a
or a
bar.
sporting event. Yeah.
Yeah.
Be
They're
like,
like,
get in
fuck that
line.
old lady and her
You gotta
drink.
wait like the rest of us.
Yeah. Yeah, your goddamn gin.
Yeah.
So I guess we were gonna do Aquaponic Cannabis 101, but we've kind of gone on a little longer in the first part, so I guess we'll skip that and do that next episode.
Cool. If you guys ever need time waster filler material, man, give me a call again.
Yeah.
I'll talk about probably everything except aquaponics or cannabis.
Yeah.
But
So we had a couple of questions from some people this week.
Oh yeah, we should answer those.
Yeah, we should answer those. Do you have, well, actually, Marty, we didn't even, before we do that, we didn't even get a chance to let Marty talk about what's going on with his grow and his stuff, and a follow up with his legal situation that we found out about last week.
oh, there's a situation going on.
Oh, I got served my extortion letter.
Oh shit.
So, I basically I have until the 15th,
Right.
to essentially apply for my permit and pay my $1,500, assuming it gets approved, which it should, because there's I'm all under compliance and all that stuff, and I'm a pre-existing grow, so I'm supposed to be grandfathered in and all that stuff. So I shouldn't have an issue with that, but my concern is that I know that the court case is like within a week of getting accepted and the injunction being applied, which means that they wouldn't be able to enforce any of their rights until the court case is settled, or any of their rules or regulations. So I wouldn't need a permit, and I'm concerned that if I give them my $1,500 for a farm use permit, that's going to go through either way, and I will never get my $1,500 back. So, that's kind of I'm in a little bit of a waiting game right now, and what I did is I applied with a letter from the lawyer that we had drawn up that said, here's the application, but we want to wait until the court case is settled. I think he put a date on it, like the court case is settled, or, like 45 days from now.
Cool. So there's a time limit. They can't keep you in limbo forever, right? Cool.
Right. Well, basically, and also not have to pay the $1,500. So that basically it's a signed statement saying that we're willing to pay the $1,500 if we have to, but we know that if we give up the $1,500 now, that we're not going to be able to get it back.
Cool.
So that'll at least buy us time, and they'll have to reply to that and figure it out. And so otherwise, I'm sure on the 16th they'll show up here with my $5,000 fine or whatever it is. It's pretty hefty. I forget what the exact number is, but and then they'll tear my plants out of the ground.
Oh,
So
damn. Well, I wish you well with that. Hopefully it works out the way you need and want it to.
yeah, I think either way, I'll basically I'm fortunate enough that I can figure out a way to get $1,500 in cash and pay them off if I absolutely have to. I mean, obviously, just to grow my 10 plants is still makes sense. I'll be able to produce plenty off of that 10 plants to cover the cost in the long run. So otherwise I'm forced to run indoors, and that just doesn't produce the same quantity. Obviously quality is still fine, and I have an indoor setup that I run, but during outdoor season it makes a lot more sense to grow and flower my 10 plants outside, because it's free power, right?
Absolutely.
So so I'm pretty excited for that. I got I think pretty close to 3 pounds off of my just regular aquaponic setup last year. I didn't have dual root zone or anything. It was basically just a fairly mature 2-year-old aquaponic system. So it produced beyond my expectations, just some great stuff. So
awesome.
Hopefully I'll be able to duplicate that this year, and I'm basically feeding all the doing all the same stuff except for with the homemade castings for my dual root zone, and feeding my worm tea into the dual root zone as opposed to just into the tank. So Yeah, it's going well. I'm growing. I've been measuring the plants, and they're growing about 4 inches a day
Oh
uh,
wow.
right now. So getting some pretty good growth. Dosed them with some mammoth pea and some stuff from the Tea Lab, which I'll see if I can see. That was the inoculant I was telling you about, Steve. That had for silica. It was some sort of microbial to help
Silica availability.
silica become more available.
Huh.
You ever heard of that?
No, it's different. Actually, Vlad's a much better person to ask on microbes. If there's a
Yeah,
microbe question, it's much more up his alley.
yeah. There's pretty much you know some microbe or another that'll solubilize just about anything out there, from phosphorus to even silica. Silica's a tough one, but yeah, I know that there are there's certainly microbes out there that rather specialize in taking carbon from inorganic sources as opposed to organic sources. So they're kind of they're different microbes than we would typically find in our AP systems with fish effluent or otherwise organic nutrients. But oh yeah, yeah, there's certainly microbes out there that'll do that, and then some. So probably something in the like just streptomyces. They'll do a lot of digesting of organic matter and solubilizing phosphates and phosphorus. So yeah, cool, man. I'm a big believer in using silica and silicates and in any kind of growing.
Yeah, for sure. Steve's talked about it quite a bit too, and so Steve, I just sent you a message with a picture of it. You can check it out and see.
Cool.
Um, it's from Tea Lab, which is actually there in Humboldt.
Where did you send the message?
On Facebook.
Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't say what
Send it
microbe they
to
use, but
send it. So it says it uses Bacillus mycoides.
Mycoides. Yeah, Bacillus mycoides.
Mycoides.
It says
MYCOIDES.
stimulate the systemic acquired resistance and produce natural growth hormones.
Cool. Yeah, sounds about right.
And it's got trichoderma and some other shit on it.
Cool.
So anyway, I added that to. I harvested a whole bunch of horsetail fern from my parents' place there in my family's place in Happy Camp. Actually, it just grows everywhere there. So I cut down a few bags of it, set up some horsetail fern ferments, and added some of that to it. And pretty excited for being able to start. I started feeding that maybe like 3 days ago, and they really seem to like it. They, like I said, they've been pushing like 4 inches a day. The outdoor ones have, so it's been great.
Nice. I mean, you're just top feeding the compost tea and the silica solubilizers and all that goodness.
Yep. So that I'm just I'm fermenting the horsetail separately, and then I mix it together right before I feed it. So I have my normal red worm tea that I make just from the red worm bin that I keep separate from the aquaponic system, and that's what gets all the banana peels and all the fruit waste from the kitchen that I would otherwise just throw away, and then make essentially the worm juice and then the tea out of that, and then mix the two together and feed them both at the same time into the Dilrid zone.
Awesome.
So that's what I've been working on, Steve. Not really much. Probably the horsetail is probably about the only project that I've really been working on too much. Other than that, just kind of tracking growth and taking pictures, starting to pop flowers in the indoor. So that's always fun. The first little ones to come out. So yeah. Other than that, it's been working well. My son's beans that he talked me into letting him plant these. They're like bush beans in around where I like had some clones set up, and they like just took over. They like exploded, and so I have like he's all excited now because he just harvested his first beans that he grew all by himself. He was pretty excited.
Oh, nice.
And so that was real fun, except for now that like where I was supposed to do clones is now completely covered with clones. So,
well, he's having a blast, I'm sure. So
it's worth it in the long run.
Yeah,
For sure.
I guess.
So I spent the better part of the afternoon yesterday like trying to sort out which ones I wanted to keep because it was just covered. There's no way I could keep all of them in there. So I went through, picked out some of the stragglers and transplanted a couple of them to outside and moved some stuff around. So that's been pretty much it for me in terms of garden stuff. I know, Steve, you were breaking down your garden last time we talked, right? Getting ready to
Yeah, I haven't broken it down yet. It's still, it's together enough to where the plants are keeping the fish alive. But this coming week here, when I have Vlad and Tate back here in town, I'll get it moved.
Oh, I'm down for helping him move plants and fish and whatnot around.
It's
Washing media is the one thing like I try to like squeeze out of.
Oh no, it's all used, so there's nothing.
Awesome.
Everything's potted. There's no media that's loose in the system. It's easy.
Cool. He told you, man, water boy, hauling cans of water up the south side of Orange Hills.
No, that's what the Jamaicans are.
No, I'm teasing, man. Hey, listen, I'm getting called inside. I think we're awake, and probably gonna go see what's going on in there. If in a minute or so.
Well, definitely thank you for joining us.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Thanks for having me.
The one question I wanted to ask while we still had you here was we had a person ask on the can I use 10% iron lignin sulfate, which is called 10% iron LS, which is not something that I had heard of before or been exposed to too much, and I know that you know much more about it, and I wanted to ask you about that before we.
Again, I mean, I can't really attest to its fish safeness at all, but the thing that looking at that product, the thing that kind of irked me about it was all the sulfur that it would come with. 10% iron at the cost of 8% sulfur as well. Might be all right. Might not be all right for some people's systems. I'd say try it out. If everyone should have like a breeding tank and a couple extra little, whatever, 10, 15 gallon tanks for quarantine or whatever the heck. Dose it. Figure out the amount you would need a dose for your whatever 2 to 3 ppm or whatever your target is for iron, and then just dose a fish tank with it and observe the fish. Really, sometimes you can't really Google anything, and when people ask me, sometimes I have to go and do it and try to kill some fish, and then come back and tell them this is what happened. Here's the LD50. Here's the median mean at which 50% of them started dying, or I couldn't kill any of them. Go for it. Sometimes you just have to try these things and see how it pans out. Now, don't go dumping into a commercial system where if it goes awry, you're going to suffer financially. But try it out on a smaller scale and see what happens. But it seems like theoretically, it seems like it should be.
My question is that how long compared to a chelated, like a DTPA or whatever, would that be available?
Probably not long.
As FE2 compared to FE3? Because it seemed to me, looking at it, like it would be available much shorter period of time. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, looking at the molecule itself and the way in which this ligand will chelate metallic ions. Most any acid will, like citric acid will, and I think there's a company or two that has some type of funny product, iron product using citric. It's a horrible chelate. It works and it's natural, but it's not really viable at aquaponic pHs anyways. And we're trying to farm bacteria. We don't really want citric acid, which is antimicrobial, even beyond the pH.
Buildup.
Right. So I don't really know. I guess you'd have to just try it out and see. But theoretically, it looks like A, it would work. B, you're right. It's a much weaker chelating bond than some of the synthetics, like EDDHA, which is probably my favorite. Most expensive one, but again, works in a vast array of pH ranges. Is very, very bioavailable. And then second would be DTPA, which seems to be the one that kind of, it's the middle of the road, works well for AP, works just fine. Those organic acids are, again, the bond is weak, a chelating agent. Even Roundup, the product we love to hate so much, it is actually, if you look at the original patent, Roundup was created, glyphosate rather, was created as a descaling agent for industrial pipeworks and whatnot, because it is a very, very powerful chelating agent. It strips metallic ions off of whatever it comes into contact with, in this case scale pipes, and then 3 years later Monsanto bought the patent, reapplied for the patent for different purpose. We have an herbicide. The way they found out it was an herbicide was where they would have to dump this descaling agent and nothing would grow. Like Jersey, or I think it was Jersey where they first noticed, or PA. Anytime they would dump this glyphosate descaling agent, nothing grew. So they started looking into, people started looking into why. Monsanto knew why, because the mechanism by which glyphosate kills plants is the same mechanism by which it kills bacteria, fungi, probably us, or at least our the gut flora. It strips life essential metallic trace minerals and elements from that organism, gut flora, or that microbe, or that plant. And that plant or living thing can no longer then, process. It can no longer biologically function and create certain enzymes and so forth, and leads to death. So there's a very, very strong chelating agent. All right. So something like lignin, like wood pulp and leftover wood pulp, lignin sulfate, citric acid, different organic acids. They don't really work as effectively. They cannot hold on to that Fe2. They can't keep it from transitioning when it comes into contact with oxygen and pH, such as our systems are. It wants to redox right into Fe3, which, as you noted, is useless. So you want a good, strong chelating agent, and as we get into the organic or natural realm, those bonds just get weaker. Now I kind of have I'm working on this thing now, and I don't know if I'm supposed to talk about it or not, but it's basically using some low molecular weight acids created by microbes as a chelating agent. And the problem that, well, not really a problem, but the issue we're having is, again, staying power. You can chelate things pretty easily, but, and you can also you can redox Fe3 to Fe2 and all that, but getting it to stay there is the trick. And getting it to stay there without the use of non-OMRI approved synthetic chelates, such as the ones that are commonly used today, which we mentioned, EDTA, DTPA, EDDHA, the big three. Those are all synthetic chelates. They work well, but they preclude you from obtaining any sort of organic, labeling for your products if you use those synthetic chelates. So it would be quite useful for a company to come up with a decent iron supplement product that's chelated naturally or safely, but is effective. That's kind of like the trick, right? We'd all want that, but so far, DTPA, man, I'd probably stick with DTPA or just go back to regular old iron sulfate. It's cheaper. Just use a little bit more, like the old-timey hydro guys did. That's what they used before chelates. Ferrous iron sulfide, ferrous iron sulfate. Those still work today. I don't know. We're kind of stuck on chelates because economically they're more, they're more efficient. It takes less, so it takes less money. But unless you're running some kind of 5-acre greenhouse with production numbers to hit and just go ahead and use iron sulfate. Stay within OMRI bounds, fish safe, whatever. But the lignin sulfate, I'd have to look at how much it costs to buy, as opposed to a big 50-pound bag of iron sulfate, which is really cheap, and see what's worth it. That's what I would look at probably if I were that gentleman. I don't know what size system he has. If it's a home system, you can probably afford to play around a little more. But if it's a commercial system and you don't know, don't use it. Try to find out first. Use it in a small tank, whatever, like we touched upon earlier. See if it, kills your fish or not or whatever. Try it again. You know, get a buddy to duplicate your results if you can. That's always helpful. And then go for it, but don't wreck your commercial system over thinking you're going to save a couple dollars using some new chelate product or whatever.
When I used to work in my previous job over Aquaponic Source, we used to get a call maybe once every month or two with someone that just had no idea about a nutrient, had a commercial system, and then just read something online about hydro or something, and just or they have it in their hand, they're right above it, and they call you just to make sure. That was at least a once every month or two call, and I know that you've handled a bunch of similar ones too.
Goodness gracious!
Of people that just haven't a clue, and you're just like, how did you get to?
How did you even? Yeah.
The commercial system that's this far along, and then no one had ever explained like basic nutrient balance or some of the really simple stuff.
Yeah, or even like simpler than that. What do you mean I have to raise my pH? I thought this was supposed to be easy. And what do you mean? What's pH? What acid base react? What the hell are you talking about?
Yeah.
Like, oh crap, you have a 50,000 plant system? Like how? I wouldn't entrust you with a drawing of a fish in a plant, let alone a commercial system. Like, geez almighty, never heard of pH. Never. Yeah. I unfortunately had to field those calls, which is why I don't field them anymore. It just got really,
at least
really
they're
cool.
Entertaining.
Yeah, at first maybe, but no, thank you. I'll read the service techs printouts at the you know what I'm talking about, the computer tech guys. They have the best service calls that you can laugh at. I don't even.
Yeah.
So
no,
I'll read about it online.
When I used to do IT, we had a lady come in with her broken cup holder CD tray.
Oh yeah, the CD tray. Yeah. Or the keyboard doesn't work anymore, and it's because they cleaned it, and you get to ask them questions. It turns out they soaked it in the
dishwasher.
tub. Yeah, or something silly like that. You're like, oh, geez, that's smart. Or the guy who was in the building, the power went out, which they found out at the end of the call, but his computer wasn't working. It was like a half-hour call, and finally the guy gets to the power cable and asks him to go check it. He's like, oh, I can't. It's real dark in here. The power went out like an hour ago. So you're like, how do you, like, I'm not even explaining it. So yeah, those are fun calls to read about, Steve, but not when you get like 4 of them or whatever the hell a week. It's ridiculous, man. I can't spend 2 hours on the phone with I'm gonna start getting mean and stuff, and it's bad business and everything. But man,
that's some good
I don't want
ones.
to say retard or anything, but retard.
Someone call and tell me that their plants were dying because they used window cleaner to kill aphids because they read it online. Come on,
yeah. I read online about a kid who or a lady who dried her kid in the microwave. So I'm not gonna, geez almighty, people, use your heads for.
This is the absolute best one, and I shit you not. I had someone. This was when I was working in Boulder. I had a kid from CU come over to me and ask me with a straight face, "Hey, I read online you can feed your baby fish by jerking off into the tank and feeding them that way. Is that true?" And my beta just had babies, and I was like, well, I asked him if he was seriously asking me that question or if he was just fucking with me, because I really could not honestly believe.
You're like, yes, but you have to do it like 20 times a day because otherwise the fish, they don't have enough to. There's not enough protein.
You have to get a helper.
You got like 15 to 20 times a day. Yeah. You don't mess with them anymore. You just like mess with those people. Seriously, like you're just like, I don't have tolerance.
You got a train going on your fish tank.
Oh man. Oh, Jesus. Hey, this is a Pacific Northwest kind of question. Maybe, do you guys have any girls up there who use menstrual blood for plant nutrients? Because I actually met, I met a gaggle of women who apparently they use their menstrual blood. And I got the impression that it was maybe like a big thing because there were like 4 of them, and it was I met them all at once. It was like 4 of them together, and they were all like, so I thought, holy cow, it's like probably this big, thing out here or whatever. I shouldn't, make fun of it or whatever. Oh, it's a new, good, so I probably ran into like 4 loonies or whatever.
You just ran into like
4 actually. That's probably what happened.
Just tried it. Oh man! Hey guys, I gotta get going out for real. Okay. I think I have some baby duties coming my way, which I really happen to like actually. Thanks for having me, man. It was fun.
Have you on again soon.
Yeah, me too. We gotta get you hooked up with a generator, some electricity, and then internet. Up in Humboldt, so you can do this, continue to do this show.
Yeah, otherwise might be offline for a few weeks,
Yeah.
so we'll
You and
see.
Marty will be sending smoke signals. Growing with fishes, smoke signals
Yeah,
version.
it'll be like the Wild North to just occasionally get these video uploads when I get into town.
I'll have to
Yeah.
like read messages to his girlfriend and shit too. Be like,
Yeah,
"He's
Yeah.
dead."
just sending my crows with a little message on them. Well, well, thanks for joining us, and we hope to have you on the show again soon. You're a really good guest, and
Thanks, man.
thanks for joining us. And I'll see you here in a week or so.
All right, man. Sounds good. Marty, it was nice meeting you. I've heard you on the show before, but it was nice getting a chance to interact with you a bit. And hopefully we'll get a chance to do that some more in the future. And you guys have a good night. And I guess we'll talk to you guys later.
Yeah, enjoy your baby time.
All right, thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you. We'll finish up the questions here and stuff, and then we'll wrap things up unless you really got to run there, Marty.
No, that
I
sounds
just
good.
wanted to finish up the questions.
What else you
at the
got?
very least. So we had a question. Was curious if you could use borax as pH down adjuster. Do you have any recommendations on how to adjust your phone with natural methods? I'm assuming he meant pH and it auto corrected. um, um, so for boric acid is generally going to raise your pH a little bit. So I wouldn't use it for that purpose. Also, you'd only want a ppm level of like 1 to 1.5 max on the high end for your boron, so you really wouldn't want to use it for that purpose. I would go with phosphoric acid, or you could always cut it with some RO water, which I don't normally recommend, but you can use as a last resort, or rainwater, or mainly I like phosphoric acid. There's a few other ways. Do you have any opinion on that one?
I mean, I use phosphoric acid to lower pH on the regular, which obviously is not, you know, I don't think that's like the natural way, I suppose, that he's looking for. I've heard the different things like the crushed egg shells and oyster shells and things like that can buffer pH and sort of like adjust it, but I don't know that there's anything that I've found that's been, and I guess probably because I haven't really looked for it. Like I don't have a problem dosing a small amount of phosphoric acid into my tank, a little bit at a time, and maintaining it that way. But so I guess in terms of that, those are pretty much the only two things that I've heard that change pH are the eggshells and oyster shells. So that's pretty much the only two I can think of.
Cool. So the next question was, I'd like to hear more about crayfish too. Which species are best, and why is their waste different from the fish? I used to teach a whole invert class and stuff like that. If you guys want, I'll do like a whole episode where I'll go over like a couple of different species that are good inverts to get, consider if you're looking to get started and all that. I'll roll that into it. Maybe we'll do that next episode along with the 101.
Yeah, that's cool because I actually need to start researching that a little bit too, because I have another the opposite shelf right now. I still have to build out what's another system. I have the 2 barrel tanks I was thinking about putting crayfish in, and so that'd be good to be able to, for me to be able to talk about that stuff too. So I don't know what I'm going to put in it yet. I might just fill it up with fish too, but I was thinking about doing something a little bit different, and there was another one I was thinking about doing. I can't remember what it was now. What are the blue ones? Are they crayfish or are they something else?
Those are crayfish, yeah.
Yeah. They're actually more expensive than I thought, though. Like if you're just looking to order some.
Yeah, although you can get them in bulk when they're little, a lot cheaper. They're also easy to breed. They just have to be like 2 years old, 3 years old to get them to start breeding for the blue ones. But yeah, we'll cover a bunch of those. I'm also a huge fan of vampire crabs. Vampire crabs are a freshwater fiddler crab, and they'll go around and eat all your dead leaves and kind of the parts of the plants that aren't doing so hot on the that are low to the ground that normally would be annoying for you to go and trim and whatever else. That's their favorite food. So you'll have these little gardeners that are really cool, really colorful, that just run around your grow beds, and they do really well in the raft beds or in media beds. If you put them in media beds and you have a decent sized media bed, take a couple of pipes, like half-inch pipe or 1-inch pipe, and just push it down into the media so that they have a tube they can go down into. They can slip down into. They need a little burrow, but they work super well. And Yeah, they'll also eat insects. So if you have an outdoor grow, and you're especially in the south, you can use them in the summertime, and they do a really good job of eating any insects that happen to crawl across your grow beds or your flower rafts and stuff like that. They love to eat meat as well, so they'll actively eat grasshoppers and other things that they happen to come across. Their
What about
preferred
caterpillars?
they prefer Yeah, they'll eat caterpillars as well. They prefer to eat meat, but
Huge
their
amount of
second
caterpillars
choice.
this year, like an insane amount of caterpillars.
So their preferred food is meat, but they'll also go after like dead leaves, dying leaves, older stuff, older plant growth, that kind of stuff. They don't generally touch anything else unless they starving to death. But if you have any kind of even a decent sized grow, you can have a dozen of them, and they will. A 3 by 3 bed could support 30 or 40 of them without an issue.
How many in like I have four half
Like an
barrels on
outdoor
that.
bed, out back outside.
Yeah, I have
Four
four
half barrels.
half barrels
You could easily do a half dozen or a dozen per barrel.
per barrel.
Hmm.
Nice.
Because any insects that crawl across or any whatever else. If you got some veggies growing underneath or whatever, especially lettuce and other things that have those real lower leaves that are kind of hard to get, get kind of moldy sometimes and get funky and stuff.
Right.
They love to get in there and just eat all that out. So
Or like the little like because I continuously harvest lettuce, so I get a lot of like the little pieces where I cut off a chunk or pulled off
yep,
a chunk already where there's a little bit left there and it yellows out and gets all crinkly and stuff. So
yep,
I'm sure they
yep,
eat up a lot of that stuff. So that'd be kind of cool. And
yeah.
I'm
They're
always interested
super colorful.
in sort of getting more diverse, um, kind of expanding the ecosystem, if you will.
Just giggling about something in chat. Also, I'd like to hear about raising insects for your AP system. I'll actually do a whole separate episode on insect raising. I used to teach a whole like 2 hour section on that, so I can actually answer that really in depth. Um, I did
I
a
would say
whole.
like if you just want to find something to like read about, I mean that probably the black soldier fly is one of the common ones. There's tons of information on those and DIY videos and all kinds of stuff. If you're just looking for some place to get started, then that's obviously a good one. I think you mentioned one on one of our last ones too. Besides
Yeah,
that,
so the top ones I'd recommend if you're looking for at least a short list would be the black soldier flies, like you mentioned, which are really good. Earthworms, doing the earthworm bins are super, super easy, work really well. And then the other one is I'm a super big fan of dubia and hissing cockroaches. They're super,
cockroaches.
super
That
easy
was
to
what I was
raise,
thinking.
and they have a really good fat to protein ratio. They have a really good calcium ratio as far as calcium to gram weight, and they're easy as heck to raise. They don't move very quickly, especially those two species, hissing cockroaches and dubia cockroaches. And you can get them in lab grade online for dirt cheap, so you can get they're clean. They don't have any diseases. They don't have anything weird. And then as long as you're not giving them anything weird, they're not going to have any problems. And you just take all your plant scraps, your leaves off your grow, your leaves off your veggies, your roots. When you replant, take your roots and your stems and anything you're not using, throw them in there. They'll eat all of it. And you can take their waste and use it again as a kind of like our worm casings, and they're super, super easy to raise. They're the easiest insect I've ever raised for fish feed for sure. And then what you do is you take the toilet paper rolls or paper towel rolls, and you throw them in. The roaches are easy to keep in any container. Just put a 2-inch band of Vaseline around the top. They won't cross it. Don't need a lid. And put your paper towel rolls in there, and then when they crawl inside, take them out, dump them into a Ziploc bag, seal the top, throw them in a freezer for half an hour, stuns them or freezes them, kills them, and then dump them into your fish tank and let the fish eat them. And then you don't have to deal with anything crawling, anything live in your greenhouse, and they're super easy to raise. They're free once you get the initial colony. You just got to keep them warm. They like to be about 88 degrees plus minus. So
Cool.
that's what I would recommend for the insects. But yeah, we'll go into that real in depth in a different episode where I can get into that a lot more, and we'll go over.
That's a good short list, I think.
Yeah, we have a great list for shows for sure. Another one was I was checking the GH in my tank and it is way high. What is your opinion of water softener pillows from API? Need to drop the levels a bit. I'm actually not
The
familiar.
GH, is that general hardness? Is that what you're talking about? Right?
Yep. Actually looking that up. I don't know.
Actually, I think
I've never used those. I didn't actually know API had a water softening pillow, to be honest with you. That's really new.
yeah, I hadn't heard of it either, and I went to look it up the other day. I think he commented on one of my videos, asked about it too. I hadn't heard of it. I went to look it up and then got distracted. So.
Well, it contains resins to remove calcium, magnesium, and soluble heavy metal ions, including iron and copper. So I would go with no based on that. Not to say that it's going to kill anything, but it's going to not help your system. So, but I wouldn't worry about your GH too much. As long as your pH is in the right range, I wouldn't worry about it. I mean, obviously there's high GH will keep your pH high, but
the only thing that, because my well water has super high GH, and the only thing that I have to be careful of is that if you just continually top off water, that'll start to build up even more. And unless you have some seriously heavy feeding plants, then I would say after I try to shoot for once a month, maybe even once every 2 months, to just do a 50% water change where you actively pump out 50% of the water that's in the fish tank and then refill it with new water so you don't get too much buildup. So that's really the only thing I'm concerned about. Other than that, I test pH, and then general hardness. For the most part, I don't worry about. And it's for mine, it's high to start with, and I can go at least. I've gone as long as 3 months with just topping off before I start seeing yellowing, kind of like you would get with a EC and a hydro setup.
So if we're getting yellowing, is it just because your calcium is getting so high it's locking out your pee, or?
Yeah, that's my theory behind it anyway. So anytime that starts happening, I do 50% water change, and yeah.
So you could also put broccoli and kale. Any of those, that whole family is really, really heavy on calcium feeding as well.
Yeah, actually, that's what I did. Is I planted a shit ton of kale this time. So I have a whole bunch of it. We've been making kale chips and all kinds of stuff with it. But
yeah, kale chips are the bomb. Barbecue kale chips are the best.
Yeah, it's good. It's a great way to get rid of both nitrogen and calcium. So I like eating my problems. It's a good way, good method for me. So I guess that's probably the main way that I consume it is just try to make sure that you have a heavy plant load. If you have general hardness, there's no if you keep your pH in the proper level, you should be able to consume most of what you're putting in. Yeah, so plants, I guess, is probably my favorite way to lower general hardness. Does that make sense?
Yep. So what's the next one? Hey guys, what is your opinion of bloom boosters? If someone is running Mammoth P and Avalanche from grow more, or is it even necessary? I'm not familiar with the avalanche from grow more. Are you familiar with that one?
I'm not sure what he's talking about. Any of them.
What is the? I'm
I mean, I
looking
know
at
what the
it right
mammoth
now.
pea is, obviously, but what's
Grow more avalanche is.
bloom
Flower.
boost? Is that
It's
what
a
he asked about?
flower hardener. So what is it, like a silica?
Most of the like bloom stuff is like a like a
Monopotassium sulfate and
yeah, a lot of zero,
silica.
like 0.005 or 0.55, like just a lower nitrogen. And
I'll have to look up this. I'm not finding an easy answer to this. I'll have to look this up and answer it next time for this one. But I mean, so I think your general question, though, correct me if I'm wrong, because I think you're still in the thing here, is that like, why would you use both nutrients and microbes? And it's you would alternate between the two. So and you always want to dose a little bit of microbes anytime you dose nutrients, and you always want to dose a little bit of sugars anytime you dose nutrients or microbes, because you got to feed the stuff to make sure it gets processed faster. You can shave a day or two off of your availability, sometimes even more, depending on what the microbe is and what the my, micronutrient or nutrient is. So,
I
um,
feed both. I that's essentially what I do is I just feed both times.
yep. But that's what I do in general is that I feed or I top feed or top water twice a week. And at the beginning of the week, I do the fertilizer, and the second half with a little bit of microbes, and the second half of the week, I do a lot of microbes. And that's my normal routine. And by microbes, I mean it could be a tea, or it could be a powder mix, or it could be a whatever. It just some form of microbe. I try to rotate it out around so that I don't, I get a good biodiversity.
I've been really into ferments lately too. Like this horsetail tea ferment has just been it's been awesome. I think the you can tell just like how much beefier the stalks are, like just in general. Even though I've only been feeding it like maybe 3 times now, it's just you can tell significant difference in the rigidity of the stalk and then just the amount of growth that 4 inches a day is just you know it's nice. It's amazing when you go out, like in terms of just seeing the difference. Like the Starfighter OG is just so much bushier than it is at other grows that I've seen it at that obviously are not aquaponic grows. So it's always interesting because I see pretty much all the genetics I get and run from somewhere else that's already ran them. A lot of my friends have already, like this Starfighter is already, I've already smoked the flower from this particular cut that's been grown somewhere else. So to be able to see the difference is a lot of fun. And my buddy that grew up before, he smoked in a lot of the stuff from last year's aquaponic system, and was really into it. And so we're both very excited to see the difference because he does a lot of the sort of the no-till probiotic growing methods that you see in the PFA, and has a lot of success with it. But there's still something just like a little bit different about the aquaponic results that we've found in every cut that we've compared so far. So this one is sort of like everybody's favorite at the moment in terms of flower and production. So it's going to be, there's a lot of anticipation around it for me personally, and for him too. So it's kind of fun, but it's neat to just have that comparison from one to the other, and see the difference because, as you know, it is there.
Yep, the AP stuff is one of how I got the flavor alone is how I ended up with one of my clients in Jamaica. So who I'm hoping I'll be able to get permission to talk to you guys about after like the week of the 17th or 18th. I have a next big meeting with them, and hopefully we'll be able to be able to tell you guys who that's with and have a big announcement on that because I'm itching to tell you guys who that's involving and where it is and everything else down there, and I can't yet, and I really want to. Um, so only a handful of people know that I trust that won't go blabbering. Um, so for Can I Use, we touched on earlier the iron lignin sulfate. Um, Another person asked, and this is just off of Reddit, but it was a good question. A lot of people try to do their home cycling with ammonia. And they read that you can just use any hardware stored ammonia. Um, you don't want to use one that's lemon flavored. The lemon flavor is one of two things: either lemongrass additive, which is very antimicrobial, or
Mm.
a limonene, which is a terpene, which is also extremely antimicrobial, which is what's in like pine sol and all that stuff. So you don't want to use either one of those in an aquaponic system; it'll crash your microbes. You can, and you also don't want to use ammonium hydroxide; it'll spike your pH. You always want to use ammonium chloride for cycling if you're going to go with an off-the-shelf liquid or powder.
Just use pine sol.
Yeah. um, but on the same note, that's where some of your terpene isolation came from before the current cannabis terpene isolation craze.
I do all my cloning in Roundup too. It's always super effective.
Oh yeah. Actually, we had, if you guys go onto the old aquaponic source forums, there back when I used to work there was a customer that had their outdoor aquaponic system oversprayed by one of the sprayers with glyphosate, which is Roundup, and it turned all the plants white. The whole top half of the plant just looks ivory white. It's really screwed up, but there's pictures of it over there if you look at it up on their search feature or whatever. The other nutrient we had in the Can I Use was langbonite. Langbonite is potassium magnesium sulfate. We actually mentioned this back in the, I think it was the potassium episode or magnesium episode, I forget. But yeah, that's a really good one to use. It's one of my favorite. It's a real good way to add potassium, magnesium, and sulfur all at the same time. It's fish safe unless you go totally insane with it. So that's a good one. Um, some other. Did you have any other Can I Use this week? If not, I'm going to move on into the news articles real quick.
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so I wanted to make a mention this. There's an article about it on Huffington Post, and then I had bumped into some people at an industry thing here not too long ago, and happened to become privy to this, and I wanted to mention. I'm not going to name companies, but I am going to mention. There's anyone that you, most of the companies that you guys use that are smaller or smaller-ish, or region wide, or just in the West, or even in just grocery store chain cannabis specific nutrient lines, have offers from Scott's Miracle Grow right now. Like pretty insane offers, and who knows who's going to take them or not. I don't know of anyone who's taken them or anyone that's not yet. But they are throwing an ungodly amount of money. And with that being said, that might be something to, that might be an indicator of what's going to happen here with the DEA soon. Why is Scott's and Monsanto and Miracle Grow all of a sudden trying to make this crazy grab for the home grow market and the nutrients in the home grow market, as well as the, commercial end? All of a sudden, like the last 2 or 3 months, all of a sudden they're trying to snap up everything. It's like they know something the rest of us don't. So I did want to make sure that everyone was aware of that, and bring that up, because it's if you're in the industry right now, it's, at least in the nutrient stuff end, it's kind of crazy, some of the stuff, rumors that are going around right now. But I won't get into some of those. This weekend is Chalice Festival in California. If y'all are out there, go check that out. Big hash festival. Pretty dope. Australia is beginning cannabis trials in New South Wales for children that are really sick, which is really cool. It's good to see them making progress down there. They legalized a couple months ago. Cannabis is beginning its first U.S. Skin cancer trials for melanoma. in the United States. Um, this is another great one, and I'll just read this because this was too fucking funny. So this kid called the cops in Australia because he was furious because he came home from school and his dad had burned all of his weed. He had a bunch of weed plants had hidden and was growing, and then he came home and his dad was burning it, and he was like super pissed off, so he called the cops and basically just like exploded on the cops on the phone about how his dad burned all of his weed, even though it's still illegal as far as that kid's concerned. So that was pretty dumb. Um, there was an article out this week in the Scientific American about how seniors that use medical marijuana use 40% fewer prescription drugs than those that don't. So it could be a great way to help, solve a big part of this prescription drug problem. Is over on Scientific American.
Like I said, man, a lot of the people that showed up that were concerned about, the regulations and growing were people that were senior citizens using it for medicine, and that was, way more affordable than prescription drugs for things like, arthritis and, different types of like muscle pain, and everybody had all kinds of, and obviously, the wide variety of different things that you can treat with it much more effectively than you can pharmaceuticals. So, I would say they were, of the 90% of the crowd that was there that was pro grower, I would say probably close to half of that was elderly. So it's a big market. Big market for sure.
I missed a question earlier. We had a question in chat. Do you put the languinite, do you put it in soil, in the water, or in a tea? And you can put it either directly in the water. Most of them are pretty highly soluble, or you can put it in the soil. Either one's fine. Azomite has to be in the soil layer. Azomite is a much slower availability and a lower availability than a lot of other additives. Same with any of your glacial rock dusts and stuff are just real low. It takes them a long time to become available. So those you want to put in either in a tea where your microbes can really pound on them and start working on them, or you want to put them in the soil layer, where they're going to be available a lot longer and have a longer exposure to the microbes, ideally. Okay. So this is my last one, and I was gonna do a new segment this week, but I'm gonna ditch it because we're going on a little long. I wanted to get on this topic because this pissed me the fuck off, and I thought it was really wrong, and I wanted to bitch about it for a minute. Jamaica is thinking about putting kiosks right at the airport where people can buy weed right when they get off the plane, or right on the docks where the cruise ships come in, which are the two big places that their money comes into the island, and allow people to buy it right there in the airport. Well, that's going to completely fuck over like 98% of the market in Jamaica and allow it so that like a handful of companies are going to be able to get a monopoly on those kiosks at the airport, and then you're screwed. Like so they want to do a permit system where you get a permit, you can have up to 2 ounces on you, and you can buy it right then and there and everything else. But it's just pointless. I mean, right now you can just go get off and you go right in front of the airport or in front of the cops and get offered weed. Like nobody cares. Like it's stupid that they're doing this kiosk crap. I'm not saying supporting street level dealing, but at the same time that you can't just push it so far to where people are immediately off the plane and it's right in their face. First off, people traveling there with kids don't want to see that crap, and second of all, you're going to push away all those people, and you're going to push away families and other people traveling to the island, and then you're also going to totally screw over the bulk of the growers on the island. Just about every smaller grower on the island is going to be totally screwed out of the market. People are going to get off, get their weed at the airport, and not buy anything from the growers that have been struggling and fighting for 100+ years to get legalization. This is total bullshit. It's worse than even like the Ohio or Florida laws for legalization. At least if they end up passing that, I mean, it'd be completely insane. But that just made me so mad, and I wanted to get on a little bit of a high horse about that because that shit just totally fucks over all these people that have been working so brutally hard to get Jamaica and their legalization movement and the growers and helping out the growers in the hills and stuff that to do all that they've been working on, and this totally just pulls the rug out from all of that and just kicks them in the teeth, and it's bullshit.
It sucks.
So
For sure.
I don't know if it's gonna pass or not, but it's something that's being proposed.
Well, hopefully it doesn't. I mean, obviously, who really knows how it's going to turn out? But ideally, you would think that you would want the tourist circulation to be somewhere besides just the docks and the airport. It could just make sense.
Well, luckily, I know people the last week I was there, I went to an amendment meeting. So I actually have been in talks with them, and it was just like, I wrote them a really angry letter. The moment I saw this, like 3 hours later, they had a letter in their inbox that was like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of words long. Um, I just went on a tangent. I was just like, this is completely insane. I was like, you guys have to prevent this. This is going to do nothing. This is the opposite of what everything that they're trying to do with this legalization movement and trying to allow the Rastas have a big part of it and everything else. This is the exact opposite of that.
Right.
So,
well, I just heard my kids come in downstairs, so I gotta
sure.
take off. It's all good. It's been fun. It was nice having Vlad on. It was a good show.
Yeah, see if we can get him on more regularly. I think it'll be a lot easier in the future. Especially since him and I will be together physically a lot in the future.
Yeah, I was gonna say in each other's vicinity a lot more often. I'm sure that'll
I'll even be able to do one with all three of us in the same camera here before too long. So
you might not be able to see much in the camera. It might be a little spooky.
3 heads.
It'd be like Vlad as he like slowly disappeared into the darkness tonight.
We'll have to get one of those like multi-hose bongs from what the fuck is it called? Half Baked, with the 4 hoses and just.
I saw one like that. There was an octopus. They had it at there's a head shop there in Eureka. I forget what it was called, but they used to have just some amazing glass. It was I can't remember now. It was off of Myrtle Avenue in Eureka. Somebody will probably watch and know what the hell I'm talking about. But or you can check it out when you're there. They might. Well, I guess shit. That was a long time ago. So who knows if they're still there or not? But it was hella cool. It was one of the multiple hitters, and it was all glass and had little rubber stoppers for the feet. So if you only had like 3 people hitting, you put stoppers on the rest of them, and then everybody could hit a leg. It was pretty elaborate. I think it was like $800 or something like that, but it would have been awesome for sure.
I used to have a big glass mushroom that was multi-hose that I sold when I left Pennsylvania. I had a huge glass collection before I left and just got rid of a bunch of it. Allegedly.
Right on, man. Well, thanks for the show, and everybody for tuning in. You can check out our channels, Ponics, and Steve's channel, and my channel is AP Meds. Aquaponic Facebook growers group. You can check that out, or the Aquaponics groups. There's numerous ones of those that we're members of, and we post to also. But Aquaponic Cannabis Growers is the one that we run and try to post specialized stuff there. A lot of stuff that we talk about here, instructions like that stuff that Steve posted the other day about labs. That was a great little walkthrough on how to make those. So a lot of good resources there. So thanks for tuning in. And Steve, you got anything else?
Yeah, I just want to do a quick shout out to Keto Life and to Dude Grows and RealGrowers.com. Definitely go check out dudegrows.com too under their aquaponics section. Vlad's posted some articles and blog posts and stuff over there too, aside from Marty and I's videos. If you guys are looking for more aquaponic cannabis content, it's a great source to learn some more. He just had recently a really good article on microbes over there, so definitely go check that out too. And I think that's it. Check out my channel, Ponics on YouTube, and Marty's on AP Meds. Also on Twitter, if you're looking to find out when they're going to be on, put an alert on Twitter. I have Twitter set up now for the videos, and also that should help some of you who've been asking when they're going to be on. We're trying to do it every week on Thursdays, but it doesn't happen every single time depending on scheduling. So, and that may change again here once I'm out in Cali. We'll figure out what works best for us. But at least him and I will be on the same damn time zone. We won't have to play any more of these time zone games, which has fucked us up before.
It helps. Our weird issue is like nobody being able to broadcast video to our stream. Like nothing. Like I tried from 2 different computers too. Like I couldn't stream from my laptop or from my desktop, or like Steve couldn't either. So anyway, yeah.
And a big thank you to Vlad. If you guys have any questions for Vlad, hold on. Well, just send them to me and then I'll forward them on. But yeah, and we'll have him back again here soon. And thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys again next time. Cheers.
See ya.